You know that feeling when you're watching people talk and you're like, wait, are we all watching the same movie? Because everyone else seems focused on the plot, what was said, what happened, what the plan is. And you're focused on the subtitles, the subtext, the symbols, the hidden code. And let me guess, you've been told you're overthinking. But here's the thing, you're not overthinking. You're seeing. You're seeing the world through what I'm calling the Hermetic Lens. This instinct to decode meaning, patterns, metaphors, motives, timing, the invisible structure behind what looks normal on the surface. When I say Hermetic, I mean it in the old school sense, coming from Hermeticism, an ancient symbolic tradition. It's the idea that life isn't just random events. It's layered with correspondences. As above, so below, where the outer world mirrors the inner world. So the Hermetic Lens is basically a method. You interpret people, patterns, and moments like they're a coded language. And if you're an INFJ, this can feel like a blessing, and also like a curse, that makes you stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. like you're in a psychological thriller directed by your own brain. But spotting the subtext is just the beginning. Most people miss this next detail, but it's the reason you feel like you're living in the future while everyone else is stuck in the past. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The shadow symbol, reading what's missing. You notice what people avoid. You don't just notice what's present, you notice what's missing. And that sounds small until you realize missing is usually the loudest thing in the room. Anyone can notice what people say. You notice what they refuse to say. Anyone can notice what people do. You notice what they won't do, especially when it would be normal, healthy, or obvious. That's not being dramatic. That's pattern detection with a built-in truth sensor. Your brain treats avoidance like evidence. If a topic keeps getting dodged, if a feeling keeps getting renamed, if a truth keeps getting shoved into the basement like a cursed object in a horror movie, your mind goes, okay, why is this the one door nobody opens? Because in your world, absence isn't empty. Absence is a symbol. Silence is information. And what people avoid usually traces back to one of three forces: shame, fear, or control. You can feel it in real time. Someone mentions something normal, then the energy shifts, the smile tightens, the laugh arrives half a second late, like it got stuck in traffic. The conversation takes a hard turn, like it just saw a police checkpoint. Everyone else keeps talking like nothing happened, like we didn't just witness an emotional computer crash. But you noticed. Of course you did. Congratulations. You are emotionally Wi-Fi enabled. Now, everything I've just told you about avoidance won't make sense until you see how it applies to the one person you'd never expect. This next part is where things get truly uncomfortable. And here's the deep part. People avoid what threatens their self-image. If admitting something would make them feel weak, guilty, exposed, or not in control, they deflect. They joke. They change the subject. They suddenly remember they have to wake up early tomorrow at 4 p.m. You're not just listening to words. You're reading defenses. You're tracking where the ego shows up like a PR team. We will not be addressing that today. The controversial truth is this. What people avoid often points to the real wound or the real agenda. Avoiding accountability protects a narrative. Avoiding vulnerability protects a fear. Avoiding honest conflict protects an attachment. And that's why you can feel crazy sometimes, because you're standing there, staring at the obvious sinkhole, while everyone else is stepping around it like it's a puddle. And the twist? You don't only spot what other people avoid, you spot what you avoid. The boundary you keep rewriting, the truth you keep waiting for the right moment to say. So yeah, it's a superpower, but it's also a mirror. Once you learn to read absence as a sign, you start seeing the hidden messages in your own life too. And that's when you realize this lens doesn't just expose them, it exposes you. You notice your cycle too. The way you overthink, then withdraw. The way you give endless empathy, then quietly resent when someone keeps choosing chaos. The way you keep negotiating with reality because you can see someone's potential so clearly, you start treating it like a promise. That's the INFJ trap. You fall in love with what could be while ignoring what is. So your gift isn't just spotting what's missing in others. Your real power is deciding what you do once you see what's missing in yourself. You can read the absence, sure, but how do you know when that absence is about to turn into an explosion? Most people wait for the fire, but the INFJ sees the spark, and this next step is how you handle it without losing your mind. Trajectory mapping, seeing the spark before the fire. And next up, the timing sense that freaks people out. You know what's coming before it happens. You have this timing sense that makes people uncomfortable because you don't wait for things to explode. You notice the spark. You don't need a dramatic argument to feel the relationship shifting. You don't need a big betrayal to sense the loyalty is thinning. You notice the tiny signals early. Distance, avoidance, delayed replies, subtle defensiveness, that weird new polite tone that sounds like customer service, not connection. And people call it paranoia, right up until it happens. Then suddenly you're intuitive. Funny how that works. The reason this freaks people out is simple. Most people live in the moment. You live in the direction. Your brain is basically tracking trajectory like an emotional GPS. You're not obsessing over one message. You're watching the pattern across time. You're noticing consistency. You're noticing shift. You're noticing that the same person who used to lean in is now leaning out. And you can feel it before anyone says a word. This is the hermetic part. You read the ripples before the wave. Small changes reveal future direction. If the energy drops, if the warmth fades, if the effort becomes optional, your mind is like, okay, I know where this is going. And it's not magic. It's sensitivity to micro cues and pattern recognition. People broadcast their future in tiny behaviors. You're just one of the few who actually picks up the signal. Now this next part is where things get interesting. Because there is a very thin line between being right and being paranoid. And if you cross it, your gift becomes a prison. But here's the twist. Being right doesn't feel good. It feels heavy because you weren't hoping to be correct. You were hoping you were just tired or anxious or overthinking. So you do this INFJ thing where you prepare quietly. You start emotionally packing your suitcase before the storm hits, while everyone else is still saying, no, it's fine. And you're like, yeah, it's fine. In the same way a volcano is fine. And if you want the controversial truth, your timing sense isn't a curse. It's a warning system. The real skill is learning when it's intuition and when it's fear trying to predict pain so it can feel in control. Because when you master that difference, you don't just know what's coming. You know what to do about it. You can prepare without panicking. You can protect yourself without punishing others for crimes they haven't committed yet. The Hermetic Lens shows you that time isn't linear when it comes to human behavior. The future is already encoded in present patterns. The ending is already written in the beginning. You're not psychic. You're just reading the story everyone else is still pretending doesn't have a plot. And that's both the burden and the gift of seeing the spark before the fire. You get to choose whether you use that sight to build better boundaries or to build better walls. Knowing what's coming is one thing, but knowing the why, the hidden engine driving the person across from you, is what makes the INFJ truly dangerous to those with a secret. The secret language of motives. Now we've got the secret language of motives. INFJs don't ask what, they ask why. You don't stop at what happened. You don't even stop at what they said. Your brain jumps straight to why. And that's exactly why people call you intense. Because most people can handle facts. They can handle events. They can handle surface level explanations that keep everyone comfortable. But when you ask why, you're not asking for information. You're asking for the hidden engine behind the behavior. And that makes people feel exposed. You instinctively track motives, like you're reading invisible subtitles under every sentence. Someone gives a compliment, and you're not just hearing the compliment, you're hearing the intent behind it. Someone gets defensive, and you're not reacting to the defensiveness, you're mapping the fear underneath it. Someone acts confident, and you're quietly testing whether it's real confidence or performance designed to protect a fragile self-image. Your brain is like, interesting. That wasn't a reaction. That was a strategy. And this is where the Hermetic Lens hits hard. You don't see actions as random. You see actions as symbols of what a person is trying to protect. Most behavior is a shield. People don't always chase what they want. They chase what makes them feel safe. So you notice motives like insecurity, shame, status hunger, and that sneaky one, fear of abandonment. The wild part? A lot of people don't even admit these motives to themselves. So when you pick up on them, they don't hear insight, they hear attack. That's why you've had moments where you calmly name what's happening. Soft voice, respectful tone, and somehow it still lands like a grenade. You're like, I think you're pulling away because closeness scares you. And they're like, wow, okay, why are you psychoanalyzing me? Meanwhile, you're just standing there thinking, because you're behaving like a textbook, and I can read. Most people think they're being subtle, but to you, they're behaving like a textbook. However, there is one specific motive that even the most seasoned INFJs get wrong, and it's the reason your empathy often backfires. And let's be honest, sometimes it's funny, in a dark way. People will do the most obvious, emotionally driven thing imaginable, then act like it was logic. Like, no, that wasn't logic. That was ego with a clipboard pretending to be a scientist. And you can tell because you're tracking emotional cause and effect, not the story they're selling. You see the wound driving the behavior. You see the fear masquerading as strength. You see the need for control disguised as caring. The reason you can decode motives so easily is because you understand that humans are walking contradictions. They want intimacy but fear judgment. They want success but fear failure. They want to be seen but fear exposure. And those contradictions create patterns. When someone's motive is insecurity, they'll seek validation in predictable ways. When someone's motive is shame, they'll deflect accountability like it's radioactive. When someone's motive is abandonment fear, they'll push you away before you can leave them. You're not mind reading, you're pattern matching. You're connecting behavior to the emotional logic that drives it. And once you see the logic, the behavior stops being mysterious and starts being inevitable. But here's the controversial truth you've probably learned the hard way. Seeing motives doesn't mean people want them revealed. Some people would rather protect the mask than heal the wound. Some people prefer the performance to the truth. So your power isn't just reading the why. Your power is knowing when to say it, who can handle it, and how to keep your clarity without turning every conversation into an emotional autopsy. Because you're not just asking why to be right. You're asking why because you want the truth to set people free. The problem is, not everyone wants to be free. Some people just want to be comfortable. And you can feel the difference instantly. You can tell who's ready for insight and who's committed to their story. That's when you realize the Hermetic Lens isn't just about seeing motives. It's about choosing what to do with what you see. We've talked about motives, but motives eventually turn into cycles. If you feel like you're watching a rerun of a movie everyone else thinks is a premiere, you need to hear this next detail about the loop. Pattern recognition. Spotting the loop. And next, INFJs spot the loop people keep repeating. You don't just notice behavior, you notice the pattern. Most people judge single moments. You track repetition. You clock who always gets close to success, then suddenly, mysteriously self-sabotages. Who starts fights the moment intimacy shows up. Who becomes busy the second accountability enters the room? And it's almost funny, because everyone else is acting surprised, like it's a plot twist. And you're sitting there like, this is literally Season 4, Episode 9. Here's the hermetic part. Repetition isn't random. Repetition is a message. A pattern is a hidden belief wearing a disguise. So when you watch someone repeat the same cycle, you're not just seeing what they're doing. You're seeing what they're trying to protect. The belief underneath usually sounds like, I'm not safe when I'm seen. If I succeed, people will expect more. If I get close, I'll be abandoned. If I relax, something bad will happen. They won't say it, but their behavior will announce it like a loudspeaker. And this is where it gets controversial. People hate having their loop exposed, because once the pattern is real, the excuses stop working. They'll call you negative for noticing. They'll call you judgmental for predicting. They'll say you're overanalyzing, when really, you're just refusing to pretend you can't see the same cycle happening for the 12th time. You're not attacking them. You're just not joining the fantasy version of their story. The reason you can spot loops so easily is because you understand that people don't repeat behaviors that hurt them. They repeat behaviors that protect them from something that would hurt worse. The self-sabotage protects them from the vulnerability of trying. The fight protects them from the fear of being truly known. The busyness protects them from the responsibility of showing up. You see the loop because you see the function. Every pattern serves a purpose, even when that purpose is outdated or destructive. The person who cancels plans isn't flaky. They're protecting themselves from disappointment. The person who picks fights isn't mean. They're testing whether you'll stay when they're difficult. Once you understand the protective function, the loop becomes predictable. You can see it coming from 3 moves away. You know exactly when they'll pull back, exactly when they'll create drama, exactly when they'll find an excuse to avoid the next level. And that's both liberating and isolating. Liberating because you stop taking their patterns personally. Isolating because you're watching the same movie on repeat, while everyone else acts like each screening is a surprise. The twist is you don't only catch other people's loops, you catch your own. The way you withdraw when things get too real. The way you overanalyze instead of acting. The way you give people the benefit of the doubt long past the expiration date, because you're in love with their potential. That's the INFJ loop. You see everyone's pattern except your own blind spot. You can predict their next move, but you keep hoping this time will be different. You fall in love with what could be, while the present reality is screaming at you to pay attention. So your gift isn't just spotting loops. Your real power is deciding what you do once you see the pattern. Because when you're an INFJ, clarity is a point of no return. You can't unsee what you've seen. Once you see the pattern, you hit a point of no return. But how do you handle the moment someone looks you in the eye and tells a perfect lie? This next part changes everything about how you protect your energy. The truth detector, hearing lies behind words. And next, they hear the lie behind the words. You can tell when someone's story is polished but emotionally off. And no, it's not mind reading. It's more like your brain has a built-in inconsistency detector that starts buzzing the moment the words and the energy don't match. They say, I'm happy for you. But the tone says, I'm competing with you. They say, no worries. But their face says, I will remember this forever. They say, I'm fine. But the vibe says, I'm building a case. And you're just sitting there thinking, okay, so we're doing theater today. This is why you're so hard to manipulate. Manipulation works best on people who only listen to words. But you don't just listen to words. You track coherence. You track emotional consistency, timing, body language, the little micropauses, the way the story is perfect, but somehow missing a soul. You're basically running quality control on human behavior. Like, this response feels manufactured. Was this apology written by the PR department? And here's the controversial part. Sometimes you know someone's lying before you can explain it. There's no screenshot, no confession, no dramatic evidence. Just that quiet internal alarm that goes, nope. And people hate that because they want a courtroom level of proof, while you're operating on pattern recognition and emotional physics. To them, you look paranoid. To you, you're just awake. The reason your truth detector is so accurate is because lies require effort. Truth flows naturally. Lies have to be constructed, maintained, defended. And that construction process creates microtells that your hermetic lens picks up instantly. When someone's telling the truth, their story has texture. It has imperfections. It has emotional weight that matches the content. When someone's lying, their story is too smooth, too rehearsed, too convenient, like someone took a real story and ran it through an emotional car wash. You notice when the timeline doesn't quite add up, when the emotions are in the wrong places, when someone claims to be devastated, but their energy feels relieved, when someone swears they're innocent, but their defensiveness arrives before the accusation. Your brain is cross-referencing everything. The story they're telling, the story their body is telling, the story their timing is telling, the story their avoidance patterns are telling. And when those stories don't match, your internal alarm system goes off like a fire drill. But let's be honest, being right isn't satisfying. It's heavy because you're not hoping to catch people. You're hoping you're wrong. You want the energy to match the words. You want the apology to be real. You want the kindness to be clean. And when it's not, you're forced to do the INFJ thing. Smile politely while your nervous system quietly exits the chat. The hardest part about having a built-in truth detector is that you can't turn it off. You can't choose to be naive. You can't pretend you don't notice when someone's performance doesn't match their authentic self. You're stuck being the person who sees through the mask, whether you want to or not. And that's why you don't argue forever. You don't beg forever. You don't chase forever. Because once your truth detector goes off enough times, you stop needing closure. You already have the data. You already have the pattern. You already know the difference between someone who's human and messy and someone who's performing a version of themselves to control the room. So yeah, people might say you're too sensitive, but what they really mean is you notice what they thought they could hide. And if you're an INFJ, that's the gift and the burden. You don't just hear what people say, you hear what they're trying to get away with. Now, everything I have just told you will not work if you don't know this final step. Without it, your Hermetic Lens won't be a tool. It will be a 24/7 conspiracy podcast hosted by your own nervous system. You don't need to turn off your Hermetic Lens. You need to put it on a dial. Because the same gift that makes you insightful can also turn your brain into a 24/7 conspiracy podcast hosted by your nervous system. When you're grounded, you're sharp. When you're stressed, you're connecting dots that were never in the same universe. So the goal is precision, not paranoia. First rule, validate patterns with evidence. Your intuition is a spotlight, not a courtroom verdict. One weird moment is not always a pattern. Sometimes people are just tired. Sometimes they're human. Second rule, separate intuition from anxiety. Intuition is calm. Anxiety is loud and frantic. Third rule, ask the question that saves your sanity. Is this symbolic, or is this my fear looking for meaning? The Hermetic Lens is a tool. You are the one holding it. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos, where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.